As the United States disintegrates politically throughout the 1930s, the American socialist leader John Jack Reed is hard at work to realize in America what was attempted in Russia and completed in France and Britain, a great socialist revolution. Some scoff at the idea of the great bastion of capitalism falling to socialism, but a network of unions and militants of the Combined Syndicates of America can dominate the Steel Belt and seriously contest the political dominance in the Northeast. The Combined Syndicates are an umbrella organization centered around the industrial workers of the world. They united dozens of separate trade unions and attached them politically to the Socialist Party. After the chaotic presidential elections in 1936, which ended in inconclusive results, various factions began to stockpile weapons, organize militias, and conduct agitation in the armed forces. The military, under General Douglas MacArthur, threatened to seize the executive and declare martial law, and the Canadian government mobilized its forces to seize strategically important bases. What seemed impossible just a few years prior had become next to inevitable, a second American Civil War. Throughout 1936, it had become clear to the CSA leadership that due to the deteriorating political situation, they had to organize military forces under Union control. Drawing from British and Russian experience, as well as American militia culture, these units were formed by CSA members in factories and city districts, under the dual leadership of a political officer and a commander elected from the ranks of the members themselves. As the federal government's authority collapsed, Reed proclaimed the workers' state in Chicago and called for a general uprising. The tens of thousands of factory and district militiamen stormed armories, police stations, and town halls across America. As the dust of the first few chaotic days settled, the CSA Central Committee was the highest authority over most of the northeastern United States. Huey Long's Union State controlled the southern states, with the federal government sandwiched between them in Washington, D.C. The fate of America and its great working class revolution would now be determined by force of arms. Welcome everyone to the Combined Syndicates of America. And this is the sort of this is the screen that you will get when you start. Of course, not exactly like this because I have everything visible, just to show you how the Civil War looks. But yes, so the CSA controls kind of a sliver of territory in the northeast of the United States, and you have a massive front line filled to the brim with a bunch of divisions. Now, they changed the way the American Civil War works, and most likely they will change this again, so do not take this as the word of God, but I will try to explain a bit about the American Civil War and how I think is best to win it in this version, which is 8.2. Now, the CSA's big advantage when it comes to the American Civil War II is the fact that they start with 71 factories, and they have a relatively easy access to a lot more factories. Now, why do I say this? It's because the federal government has the most economy at the start. The American Union State is weak in that regard. They have 98 divisions, but the feds have more divisions, and the CSA have more divisions. The CSA also have more factories. So the American Union State is the weakest of the three. When you're playing as anyone but them, you can kind of safely ignore them. Their only advantage is positioning. They are positioned to the south, so they sort of have their backs to the ocean, and unlike the CSA, they cannot get backstabbed by the Canadians. And unlike the Americans, which I was going to talk about, they are not sandwiched. So yeah, the problem with the United States of America, and I will show you the results of this, is that the AI will likely try to hold this whole front line. Now, it's not as bad as it used to be with the divisions having to reach the front line, because they didn't actually spawn on the front lines before, and I mean, in some ways I like that more, but you know, not gonna argue for that or the other. But while the defensive positions that they start in are good, you know, placed on rivers and stuff like that, they will crack eventually. And if you are smart, if you select your targets well, the AI will most likely just try to do something stupid and then you can attack them and punish them for it. What I mostly recommend to win the Civil War is to never use this button, the automatic planning execution, unless the bar down here is very, very green. In which case, you want to do that so that the AI will be pushed back constantly. But yeah, what I recommend to do is, at the beginning, you have an army that's facing New England. Just try to take it. Most likely the Canadians will occupy it, but if they do not, this is a lot of extra industry. And actually, New England is the reason why I said that the American feds, while they do have the most factories, they will most likely lose a lot, because number one, it's relatively easy to capture Iowa and Missouri as the CSA, and that's quite a few factories. Then it's relatively easy to push back the Union in the center, and that will net you more factories in Kentucky and Tennessee and maybe in Virginia. You know, you should always try to encircle Washington. It's always a pretty good idea, because that's going to sort of if you encircle Washington, the Feds' armies outside of Washington will have problems supplying themselves. So yes, it's always pretty good to try to surround that, and that will make it a lot easier to defeat all of the other guys. And then there is New England, which is a lot of the US's starting industry, actually. Like if we take a look at this from an observer, and then we see that there's 10, 14, 21, 24, 26, 28, 32 factories of the Americans are starting 130 free. So that brings them down to 100. If they lose Iowa and Missouri, that's another 14. It seems like I got the count wrong, but yeah, you get the deal. The Americans may start off as, on paper, the strongest, but they will very, very quickly go down in flames. Now, what's the result of all of this? Also, let's talk about the army first. So you start off with a crap load of divisions, enough to cover the whole front. First order of business is to assign some decent generals. You have a few divisions facing the Canadian border. That's Michigan Reed Killers. Sometimes I love the little details. Yeah, you need to kill these guys, and then I always leave a few divisions over here just in case the Canadians try anything, or just in case some division sneaks past and tries to go for your capital, so you have some kind of reserve. Most likely, again, Canada will occupy New England, so these units you can bring somewhere else along the line that you think you're going to be in a good position to push in. And yeah, you just do that. You try to surround Washington. Another important thing is that what you should be building. Now, you have quite a bit of manpower to start off with, but you actually start with war economy already already picked. So I recommend to use your political power to go for total mobilization, and to use your focuses to get People's Liberation Army and then expand the army. And then just try to rush to extensive conscription to offset the total mobilization. This will make it slower for you to win the Civil War, but it will make it a lot safer in a way, because I think the problem that a lot of people have is that they kind of just waste all of their infantry equipment by doing activation plan, you know? That's probably the reason why a lot of people say that this is very, very hard to beat, which, you know, it's pretty hard in the new patch, and I will show you my quick playthrough, a couple of hours of playtime today. I had actually never played the 8.2 Civil War before, but yeah, that's essentially that. And yeah, there's a couple of important divisions that you need to keep in mind. A few of the, obviously, motorized. You can rush to get yourself some light tanks if you want, and equip your motorized with light tanks. That makes them a little bit more effective at breakthrough. Then there are the two Mingo brigades. Now, in terms of flavor and lore, these guys are supposed to be over here, actually, in West Virginia, because the Mingo County was the location of a series of essentially conflicts between miners and the American army in real life, and you know, the biggest insurrection in the United States after the American Civil War, the first one. And so, yeah, these guys have that sort of flavor history behind them, but the important part is that they are 40 with artillery. So they're actually really powerful divisions when everyone else is sporting just like pure infantry. And the good thing is that these are not special templates, so you can build more of them. So one thing that I recommend to do is to just build Revolutionary Continental Army with your stockpiles. If you actually get a lot of them in production, that will stimulate the AI to send you more Lend-Lease. So yes, do try to sort of take advantage of the fact that the Union of Britain and the Commune of France are on your side. Another important thing is that a lot of the AI countries will offer volunteer and Lend-Lease to the United States of America. So that's another reason to encircle Washington, because that's where the volunteers will spawn. So yeah, if there's a bunch of Germans and Japanese and Austrians stuck in Washington, they cannot wreak havoc on your lands elsewhere. Also, another thing is that you start off with 400 tactical bombers, 400 fighters, and 400 close air supports, so make sure you use those correctly where you are fighting in sort of the crucial sectors. And yeah, like, the actual American and Union State forces are not that much better qualitatively than you. Like, obviously the Americans start off with a few infantry divisions, but those, you know, there's not a lot of them. They have one cavalry division, and they get some motorized, 6 of them. Army Loyalists are essentially their equivalent to the Mingo Brigade, and these are actually the divisions that should worry you the most, because they're pretty damn strong, and yeah, that's the most difficult part, is having to deal with that. But your superiority is not quality, it is economics, as I've already said. The American Union State has also got quite a lot of motorized and stuff like that, but, you know, they're also pretty damn weak. So yeah, honestly, the most logical thing to do, in my opinion, and I'll show you what are the results of this strategy, are trying to focus on the Northeast at the start. You know, try to see if you can get New England. If not, whatever. Bring your divisions somewhere like in Virginia. I know that there's mountains over here, but you can try to break through the feds somewhere around here and reach the sea. Once you have encircled Washington, then you can focus on the Central Front. And in the Central Front, by focusing there, there's a lot of plains terrain, which is going to make it easier for you to fight. Once you get past the river line of the feds, you can fight the Union State, and that makes it a lot easier. At some point, you will break through to about here, to North Carolina, and then you can push along the coast. So that's, you know, those are the phases. You first try to reach the sea in Virginia and take New England. Then you try to reach the Union State and sandwich the Americans in sort of the Kansas, Missouri. Sorry, that's not Kansas. Kansas over here. But yeah, like Kentucky, Missouri, and Tennessee, you can sandwich them here, and then you pincer move the American Union State from north and coast. In the meantime, you need to try to defend yourself up here, and then at some point you can just march on west. But yeah, for most of the game, you can just ignore the west. I'll show you what the results of this are right now. All right, and here we are. So this is December 1937, so Civil War has been going on for a few months, and as you can see, it is extremely bloody in the new update. So we lost 700,000 men, but the United States of America has already lost 1 million, and to be fair, most of those are captures. So you can see what I did. I encircled Washington, and I'm getting kind of derped on by them in the north, sort of far north, and that was something that seriously surprised me, actually. Seriously surprised me. I thought that after I encircled Washington, they would have been dead, and after, you know, we destroyed 1 million of their troops, that they would have been dead. But no, they're coming back, and they're still fighting, which means that, yeah, these guys are pretty damn scary. We have 100 factories, and, yeah, with the war economy, we can sort of build faster than our opponents. We are still trying to get our political power to get to extensive conscription, but the war is basically all but won, because the Union state has been severely destroyed. And that's what I meant with, and I'll play along just to show you what I'd be doing to continue this. So like, oh wow, Bulgaria, please. So essentially the Union state is really bloody weak. The feds are not weak, but they're the AI. And so what I meant with earlier on, just play conservatively and let the AI do mistakes and win the game for you. Like, the AI will always make some kind of big mistake, and that will make the rest of the playthrough a lot easier. A lot easier. So yeah, what you need to do is, again, just play along relatively conservatively. I'm not saying that you need to turtle, although you definitely can do that, but you know, it's probably best not to turtle. Just play along and try to get encirclements as much as possible. Do not do stupid attacks. Japan announces her ambitions, obviously. And then once they get encircled, just crush them mercilessly, as I'm doing right now. So you see right now, I got most of the AUS army encircled, and now we're just plodding along to the south. And you make sure that you confuse the AI as much as possible by moving quickly, because that will make them redeploy a lot of troops all over the place. They really like to do that. And yeah, so right now we have managed to essentially stabilize the whole front over here. It's not an encirclement on these guys, but, you know, better than nothing. Better than being encircled. And yeah, so what I'd be doing moving forward is essentially the same. Trying to get encirclements, trying to be defensive against the feds, and at this point, defensive against the feds and aggressive against the Union state. So like right now, they're making a mistake. They've got a couple of National Guardsmen over here, but even more divisions. They're just walking around waiting to be encircled. And I can bring this extra division down here. That's why you keep divisions in reserve, in the rear. Yeah, so he got himself encircled with his motorized. Pretty damn good. And, ooh, he's gonna get encircled. Look at that. Like, he moves down, and that means he's pretty screwed. So that's essentially what I do. And as you can see, it would be relatively easy to win the rest. So now let's, so this is basically that. This is basically the strategy. Looking at the focus tree for the CSA, you have the first half that's locked behind you winning the Civil War, and we'll take a look at that after with another save. Then you have a couple of choices. There's the boring Navy and the boring Air Force. One pretty strong thing about all of this is that you keep, like when you spawn, you keep whatever you have researched as the United States. So you can start actually by taking all the Navy doctrine stuff, and you can get, so you can research Navy doctrines really quickly as the United States with the Navy focuses of the United States, and then you can take the Navy focuses of the Reds, and so you can double your research rate, essentially, for Navy doctrines and get base strike done really, really quickly. So once you've won the Civil War, you can have a really, really strong Navy. You do not want to sail any ships out, though, before the United States is defeated, because they are the ones that keep the entire fleet, and so they're the ones that keep the bloody battleships and aircraft carriers at the start. So yeah, you need to be kind of careful with that. In terms of the army, you have two choices, either between the Red National Guard and the People's Liberation Army. So I love that name, by the way. What I prefer is the People's Liberation Army because it has a ridiculously strong modifier to organization, max planning, artillery attack, and artillery defense, which are just absolutely ridiculous. And plus 50% planning speed if you went with industrial warfare. Or sorry, actually, it might be even higher if you've gone for industrial warfare, because that's probably what gives you the artillery attack. So yeah, the bonuses that you get in the People's Liberation Army spirit depend on whether you've gone centralized command or industrial warfare. I obviously prefer industrial warfare, not just for the great name, but also because I prefer superior firepower. But you can do whatever you prefer. The army line also has some very, very nice war support, although you almost never need that, especially while you have fighting for America. You will need that once you actually win the Civil War, and I'll show you why. So there's tank research. That's not that useful. Artillery support. Like the other good focus down here is always prepared for the encryption and decryption. But that's locked behind winning the Civil War. So after you take this one, you can just stop taking focuses and go to 100 political power and get extensive conscription, which is pretty damn good. Red Air Force, Red Navy is just pretty boring. The Red National Guard is supposed to be about, obviously, you know, keeping your militias. And that's because, like, there's technically National Guardsmen that are defecting to you, whereas the People's Liberation Army is trying to make a centralized army that's, you know, centrally controlled, and that's obviously, you know, quite great. The decentralized one, though, kind of interestingly enough, has the lightning warfare. So if you want to have mobile warfare, you want to go for the National Guard and not for the People's Liberation Army. And then you get, instead of the artillery support line of focuses, you get the American Auto Union. So yeah, if you want to improve your, vehicles, it's in some ways better to go for Red National Guard. So yeah, once you win the Civil War, this happens. So you get this nice event, the end of the Second American Civil War. What could have been the greatest capitalist oppressor of the 20th century is now firmly under control of the working class. So yeah, solidarity forever. You pick that, and this is the situation that you get. Now, you lose fighting for America. You keep whatever spirits you have already taken, obviously from focuses, but you get the really terrible recovering from the Civil War, economic devastation from the Civil War, overwhelming Federalist resistance, and overwhelming longest resistance. So, what the hell are these? These are essentially the terrorists left over, like the two opposing factions that you have defeated have left over a lot of fighters that may have been dispersed from their units, but are still very much willing to fight. You lose a lot of the units like the National Guards, the Revolutionary Militias that you had spawned, and you're left with, I believe, only like, yeah, the Revolutionary Continental Army, which, don't mind the different template. This is just, this is because this was done on a previous version, 8.0. But yeah, you keep whatever divisions you have trained, and, you know, a few of the special divisions, but not all of them. Well, in here, as you can see, I was able to take New England before the Canadians, and so that was obviously quite important to my success, and now I just get it. So you get a core on that. Now, the thing is, at this point, you're pretty useless because you have this overwhelming Federalist resistance, so you have longest bombings and, like, you know, all sorts of bad events that come from those two terrorist sort of spirits. And then you have the economic devastation from the Civil War and recovering from the Civil War. So you're just shit out of luck. You don't have any stability. You don't have any war support. You are pretty much unable to get any economy. You have massive consumer goods factory requirements. And yeah, so what you need to do at this point is you need to go down and do the half of the focus tree that was locked to you before. So you have one tiny branch, which is the reconstruction. Let's do focus.autocomplete so that I can show you what this is like. So this is obviously trying to reintegrate the country back into you. And once you complete this, you get... oh, I forgot to show you reconstruction. But yeah, reconstruction is a spirit that you get, which gives 50% factory repair speed and 10% civilian factory construction speed, actually. So taking reconstruction is over, unlocks all of these things, rebuilding the country, and the destroy, Jim Crow, and transformative justice focuses unlock, destroy reactionary terrorists decisions. Now, there's also an event, a couple of events that you get, that we should be getting right now, which is the Trial of America First and Trial of the Old Government. So this is about how to deal with the enemies of the revolution. As far as I know, they don't really change anything. So you can just murder them. And yeah, after you take Destroy Jim Crow and Transformative Justice, you can take these decisions for Destroy Reactionary Terrorists. They cost 20 political power each, and you need to do these 4 times, if I recall correctly, to remove the spirits entirely. One good thing is that when you take them, there's an effective chain. Actually, no, maybe 3 times. When you take them, it's not just like you need to do them 3 times, and in the meantime, it's always minus 5% everything. They actually reduce the bad modifiers of the spirit as you progress. So yeah, it's kind of like a progression. I like that. And then there's the rebuilding the country, which is just like at the start you only have cores on the states that you started with, and in this case I took New England, so I guess I have those 2. But yeah, you can, by doing rebuild the country, you know, rebuild New England, rebuild the South, all of these, you get cores. So yeah, that's actually quite important because, you know, it's gonna massively improve your economy, your recruitable population, and all of that. So yeah, this is pretty good, and you get some very nice bonuses as well for these focuses. And they all are kind of dumped into the social revolution spirit, which also gives you some nice flavor events if you have it, like how you're dealing with the family situation and you know, segregation, all that kind of stuff, which improves the flavor of your playthrough by quite a bit. And then there's the second constitutional convention. Now you cannot autocomplete this one because this one just spawns events as you're playing. So I'll show you what these events are like. The problem is, it doesn't matter. So the way that the political branches work is that they're requiring you to take the second constitutional convention, and there's a bunch of events detailing, like, you know, how the new constitution is being written, what kind of federal or confederal or centralized system you're adopting. But in the end, all of that does not matter to actually progress down the focus tree. It's not like if you pick more centralist options, you're gonna get the totalists, and if you do not, then you cannot pick the totalists, or vice versa. You can pick at the end of the second constitutional convention, you get an event for picking the interim president, and that's what locks the Commonwealth of Labor and the Union of Socialist American States. If you pick a syndicalist, aka Elizabeth Gurley Finn, you can go down this line. If you pick Norman Thomas, who's the radical socialist, you can go down the Commonwealth of Labor. If you pick William Z. Foster or Earl Browder, who are the totalists, you go down Union of Socialist American States, which is just really, really bloody boring. Also, actually, apparently it's not that you get events in the meantime, so I'll just skip ahead. Okay, so we have taken Second Constitutional Convention, and now the events start. So you get the CSA Central Committee as your leader, and a bunch of events start to fire about what you're going to be doing. And I'll just show you what you can do, okay? So that you do not need to take me for my word. Like, I'm gonna pick literally all of the total list options, okay? Or just all of the total list options, or, you know, as much as I can, and I'll show you that you can still pick the Commonwealth of Labor. In case you do not... Okay, alright. So yeah, like, enshrine government control of the judiciary. And then you get also these, all these long events about the articles of the Constitution. You know, Constitution favors the president. Centralized government. I just picked all of the total list stuff, so you can see that the centralist faction has been very, very influential. Now you get to pick the capital. You can pick Philadelphia, New York City, Chicago, and Washington. Philadelphia, obviously, because, you know, it's the site of the Second Constitutional Convention and was also the site of the First Constitutional Convention and the Declaration of Independence, so it's kind of a historic, revolutionary site. Chicago, obviously the capital of the CSA, the capital of the new American economy, and the capital of the working class movement, so, you know, the capital of the Red Revolution. And New York City, another one of the big industrial cities and really the economic heart of America. And Washington, D.C., the traditional political capital. I like Chicago, but, you know, that's just a flavor choice. It doesn't change anything. So you get the Constitutional Convention has concluded. Moves the capital to Chicago. And, yeah, so long live the workers of America. You get the event, the interim president now, because Reed wants to step down as a president. He wants to sort of pass over the torch, leave it to someone else. He wants to spend the final days with his wife because, you know, his health is deteriorating, and so there needs to be a second president. The thing is, as you saw, I picked all of the total list stuff, and it's not locking me out of any choices. So I can literally pick anyone I want. I can pick Elizabeth Gurley Finn, who is the syndicalist, and that will launch me into the Commonwealth of Labor path, and I will be basically forced to go down unionist economic policy because I'm syndicalist. There's no, like, secondary elections. The elections after this one are in 1940 November, so it's over a year from now. And yeah, essentially they kind of just confirm usually whatever you have done, unless you try to do some derpy stuff in the Commonwealth of Labor. If you go totalist, the 1940 elections are a sham. So yeah. So yeah, you can pick Elizabeth Gurley Finn and you're syndicalist. If you want federalist economics policy, which is market socialism, then you'd pick Norman Thomas and you're the federalist faction. Instead, if you pick either Browder or Foster, you are the Union of Socialist American States, which I'll show you later. But yes, Foster is essentially portrayed as Trotsky, and Browder is basically Stalin, except, I mean, Foster's also Stalin. So yeah, he's kind like he's got references to Trotsky, but they're both basically just Stalin. Like they do the same thing. Like, oh look, you know, he wants collective farms and he wants state farms. It's like literally the same thing. At least in the Soviet Union, it was literally the same thing. And here there's state quotas and price controls and controlling of the unions. So this is literally just in real life, you know, Stalinist economics and what have you, planned economy. And here you have a quote-unquote centralized syndicalism. Foster's economic policy is called Towards a Syndicalist America. In real life, he published Towards a Soviet America, I believe, or something like that. So it's basically just like, you know, syndicalism with totalist characteristics. He's slightly less insane than Browder. But yeah, he just still wants to do some pretty nasty things. Like, the events for these people, when you're playing as them, are always pretty damn nice because, like, it's telling you how they're, you know, making up show trials. In the case of Browder, he essentially, like, does the Moscow trials, in a way. And Foster, I believe he can, like, he's more of the secret police kind of guy in his events. Like, there's his enemies' children being kidnapped. There's a bunch of nasty stuff that he can do. But yeah, he's slightly less absurd than Browder. So yeah, I believe also the icons here should be switched because Foster is the one that's more syndicalist, whereas Browder is the one that's more, you know, hardline totalist. So yeah, those icons should probably be switched. Yeah, so for now, what if I pick, for example, Elizabeth Gurley Finn? I get a nice president. Now, this one's the president. Then there's also the general secretary, who's the head of government. And in this case, it's still Elizabeth Gurley Finn. But that's the one that will be chosen in elections. And then you will choose the president as well. So, like, the general secretary of the CSA, or of the Industrial Workers of the World, or what have you. Actually, I think it gets renamed to the American Labor Party later. Hold on, let me just do this. That's the most important position, and not the president. Anyway, so the Commonwealth of Labor. You get an amazing flag, but not as amazing. You just wait until you can see the Socialist American States flag, which is actually a lot better than this one. And then you can just go down your focus tree and get to the Revolution Continues. Now, at this point, I am doing them with focus autocomplete. Okay, so it looks like I'm almost done with the focus tree, but that's because I'm insta-completing these. Like, normally I wouldn't be nearly as done with these as right now. So the Revolution Continues is what you want to have at the end, because we shall begin to look to spread socialism throughout the Americas. This one gives you war goals on everyone in South and Central America, but you need to be at peace to get those war goals. And the other thing is that by the time you're finished, it's going to be 1942, 1943. So it's kind of pointless. And also, it's not that interesting. I'll show you the way that these focuses work. Yeah, it's very, 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 very unfortunate, to be honest. They should have probably have had some kind of other system to get all those war goals, because, like, by the time that you get them, you have probably already entered the Second Weltkrieg and have probably won. Or if you have ignored the Second Weltkrieg and have tried to just, you know, rebuild your internal political sphere first and your economy first, then probably the Third International has been defeated, and now you're shit out of luck because you have to win against everyone and it's going to take forever. So yeah, that's kind of the big problem with that. And I kind of like the two political trees. They're not that interesting compared to some other ones out there, but in this I'm very much coughing about, you know, Indo-Chinese Union, for example, or Insulindia, although Insulindia is more on the middle ground, but yeah, Insulindia is pretty interesting. Or Greece is also pretty damn good. But yeah, all these like newer focus trees that are coming out generally tend to be really bloody good. The Commonwealth of America's one is good, but it's not the best. Like, not nearly as great as the greatness that is Australasia. Like, this one is just like, oh yes, it's so good. But yeah, essentially you do not need a great focus tree to have fun as America because you're really bloody powerful. So yeah, you can just do whatever you want and make up your own focus tree or something. I don't know. Anyway, so like, what's kind of funny is that if you have gone for the Commonwealth, you get the Office of Strategic Services, which obviously was the precursor to the CIA in the Second World War for the real United States of America. And as the USSA, you get the CIA. Literally gets the CIA. And yeah, so this one is just to get yourself some nice, great bonuses, which, you know, always good. Intelligence stuff. Then the other one is protective working class. If you've gone for syndicalists, you get the councilism, which is obviously superior to federalism, because federalism is like you're keeping the United States' bureaucratic structure, EU, like, what? Although for some reason it increases the popularity of syndicalism. I guess it's just because it's supposed to be like whatever ruling party you have. Yeah, town hall democracy, mutual economic committees. So you get a bit of an insight into what you're supposed to be doing. So yeah, that's that. Let's go for the Union of Socialist American States, so I can show you that one. It's always pretty good. Hello, purges. So look at that amazing flag. You don't tell me that that's a great flag. Like, it's so good. Anyway, the Union of Socialist American States, in this case we are Browder, and you can see that you already have some purges. So you're gonna have a lot of purging happening in here, and that's quite great. So there's this one, this part. It's all about trying to be a quote-unquote vanguardist and establishing the dictatorship of the proletariat. So just, you know, trying to make the American Union the Soviet Union again. Make America Soviet again. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, democratic centralism, all the good stuff. On this part, there's Defend the Revolution. You get the Revolutionary Guards, state media, and create the CIA. Yes, I absolutely bloody love this. And the two different things are fosters economic policy versus Browder's economic policy. Now, the thing about that is that they're basically the same in a way. Like, this one's more focused on the planning side of things, whereas this one nationalizes everything and tries to then run things in a syndicalist way. But they're basically the same thing. What I would have more liked to see is, you know, they could have just copied what happened to the Soviets in real life and had Browder support a quote-unquote new economic policy, because that's what Stalin did in real life. He supported the new economic policy, which was essentially like, well, I mean, it doesn't make any sense though for the United States, I guess. No, scrap that. It's bullshit. It doesn't make any sense because the whole reason that was happening in Russia was different. But yeah, it could have been nice to have these be at least different in some way. But yeah, other than that, so if you've picked Browder, you get Browder. If you get Foster, you get Foster. And you purge people. That's about it. There's one more thing that can happen to you. I've got a few more saves, so I can show you a couple of things, like army restructuring over here. That's pretty. Yeah, that's the last thing I want to show you. When you're playing as the Totalists, I believe it's both of them, but definitely Browder because that's the one that I tried today. But when you're playing as a Totalist, you're gonna get this army restructuring event. Quote-unquote restructuring, which is basically the purge of the army. So you can either leave the army as it is, or commence the restructure. Now, I think that the event is bugged, and that these choices are supposed to be reversed, because leave the army as it is increases Totalist popularity. Shouldn't that be commence the restructure? you know, and that pisses off people in the army. And this event leads off to another event, which is the only other event that I wanted to show you today, which is the Butler coup. Now, Smedley Butler, is the field marshal that you have. He, in real life, was involved, supposedly, nobody really knows what the fuck happened there, in something called the business plot, which was a alleged fascist coup that, again, some members of big business in the United States were trying to carry out against Roosevelt. And supposedly they'd asked Butler to become the fascist dictator of the United States or something like that. He said no because he was kind of a lefty, and that's why he is in the CSA, because he's kind of a lefty and, you know, was kind of opposed to a lot of American imperialist policies, although, I mean, he wasn't really, like, a communist, but, yeah, like, he's kind of the person that would be there. Also, what the hell is happening? Probably something just happened, like a peace deal, or someone just got released and the game is lagging. Anyway, so there's an event that's based on that sort of real life event, only it's Butler cooing either, whatchamacallit, Browder or Foster in the name of restoring syndicalist democracy against totalist tyranny. And if the game were to actually bloody play, you know, I could actually talk about it a little bit more, but no, like, it's also obviously supposed to mimic the Lawrence coup in the United Kingdom. And yeah, peace conference just happened, obviously. The Lawrence coup in the United Kingdom and the Gamelin coup in the Commune of France. So in case you do not know, in Kaiserreich, if you... Or I guess you could also say the agrarian revolt in the Berafia commune, although the agrarian revolt is a little bit different. So in case you do not know, if you go totalist as the Commune of France, or actually, I believe only... No, not just totalist, but only the Jacobins. Yeah, I believe the Sorelian do not get that. But yeah, if you go for the Jacobins as the Commune of France, you can purge the army, and if you do that, then the army coups you, or tries to, and it can be a pretty bad event, because that also gives the opportunity for the Entente to attack you. And obviously, with the Union of Britain, if you've gone for Marsillaise, and you purge the army, you can get couped by T.E. Lawrence, and if you've taken the RED focus, obviously, and you can get couped by T.E. Lawrence, and he can either stay as a radical socialist, which is also what the Commune of France military rule is. It's radical socialist. And yeah, or you can restore the United Kingdom, but that's just another thing. With the Union of Socialist American States, there's supposed to be an event called the Butler coup if you go for the Union of Socialist American States. And I'm not sure what you're supposed to pick because the event looks bugged, but you're technically supposed to leave the army alone, which to me doesn't make any sense because it's the opposite of all the other ones. But every person that I've read that, you know, told people how to get it said that you need to leave the army alone. So I guess that's how you do it. I tried to leave the army alone and wait for like 2 years, but nothing happened. So yeah, it is to be said that someone else also said that you need to have People's Liberation Army, which again should be no problem. But yeah, this is the only other political option that you have. What happens then is that you switch back to the Commonwealth of Labor, but you actually keep the flag, I think, from, at least that's what it seemed from a picture I've seen, from a screenshot. You get Smedley Butler, this guy, as your as your president, and I believe you can change around to a radical socialist or a whatchamacallit, a radical socialist or a syndicalist at the following election, and he's a radical socialist. So you can take federalist things, and you can take federalism. So yeah, that's what happens, and you also get to keep all these bloody bonuses that you have taken with the totalists. So it's actually pretty damn good if you have taken like everything. Although I'm not sure, like I've stopped here because I was trying to get the coup. I've stopped, I haven't taken Revolutionary Guards and People's Commissars because some people say you do not need to take control of the army. So I don't know. I guess People's Commissars and the CIA would be doing that, and the Revolutionary Guards would be doing that. I tried to see if it would make it work. It didn't. Now that I've, as you can see, picked the other option, it's still not really doing anything, so maybe it's just bugged. Just to be sure, maybe you can try to ask someone else. And if you have gotten the coup, tell me how in the comments. Yeah, essentially this is about it. The party names switch whenever you finish the Constitutional Convention. They become, one of them is the Revolutionary Workers' Vanguard Party, which is a mouthful, and I would have preferred the Communist Party, simply, because that's what this is. It's stated in a lot of events and in the lore that the Communist Party does exist, and that it's Browder and Foster's party, so why not just call it the Communist Party? I have no idea. The other one are the Socialist Labor Party, which is the syndicalist one, and the Socialist Party of America, which is the radical socialist one. So yeah, that's basically about it. Nothing really else to talk about with the CSA. Oh yeah, right, there's a couple more things that I need to show you. Right. I do not know what the end game for a totalist looks like because I haven't had the time to play an entire totalist game, but I can show you a few more things about the end game for the radical socialists, or the Commonwealth in general. And it's the 1944 presidential election. What the bloody hell? Seems like the game is instantly lagging. Okay, so you can confirm whatever choice you already had, or you can switch. And if you switch, this is bugged. It says change in popularity of radical socialist 20%, but it does not actually say that it becomes the ruling party. It becomes the ruling party. So yeah, it's bugged. But yeah, you get that, and then you get an election for the general secretary over here. I think you actually keep the CSA Central Committee as your quote-unquote president for all time, or something like that. I'm not sure what other leaders you can get. So yeah, here it's supposed to be coming up right now. The elections for the general secretary. Come on, don't be a dick. Yeah, the game right now is running in 1945, so it's obviously going to be slow as hell. And, come on, don't be a dick. Okay, so general secretary elections. You can pick some of these nice people. But you still have the CSA Central Committee as the leader. Although I guess if you pick syndicalist, you're still Elizabeth Gurley Finn, because that's the party leader for the Socialist Labor Party. Kind of wish that they would have actually given the leader to the Socialist Party of America. You can obviously not pick the Totalists because they're out. Like, they may have some influence, but they're just out. And yeah, at this point you also can get the Revolution Continues, which you can only do if you have finished off all of your enemies. And yeah, that's the last thing I'll show you, how that looks. So yes, in a bit, I shall show you. So, in here, after you are at peace and you have completed the Revolution Continues, you get these exporting the revolution decisions. And literally all that they are is 60 political power, and you declare war on all independent. You get to declare war on every independent and not totalist, syndicalist, or radical socialist in South America. So like, for example, right now, Mexico is totalist, Central America is red sock, so we cannot declare war on them, but everyone else is fair game. Now, this is obviously really bloody good, but at the same time, it takes forever to get there. Like, all these focuses are 50 days, right? Suppose that you finish the Civil War in mid-1938. So you need to go down, like, even if you just ignore Reconstruction, which I would not recommend, because there's a lot of important things in here. Even if you ignore that, you need to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 focuses, if I've counted correctly, just in the political line to get to here. 18 times 50 is, really should have calculated that before. 18 times 50 is 400 plus, no, 40 plus 500. So 540 days. So that's over a year, almost 2 years, essentially. So it's maybe a little bit earlier than 1941, you can get all of these war goals. Maybe a little bit earlier than 1941. So if you do that, you need to have not joined any wars anywhere else. So for example, as you can see in this playthrough, I decided to join a Second Weltkrieg, and it went pretty well. Yeah, you need to not join the International, which can be a pretty bad idea because then maybe the International gets killed. I believe you can only join the International if the Commune of France is leading the International. You cannot join the International if the Commune of France has died for some reason. So that's pretty bad. And yeah, it's just like, yeah, then you spend like a year or two taking South America, and it's like, you know, good, but at the same time, you know, I would have liked to do something else. So yeah, that's my like recommendation in a way. Like, for a patch, I really would remove the at peace requirement, because you're bloody exporting the revolution by violence. So why do you care if you're in the middle of the World War as well? You know, in fact, it should be an incentive for you to do that. Now, another thing that pisses me off about this is that this liberate focus, or export the revolution focus, it only gives you war goals. It does not give you the option of doing coups or influencing politics or anything like that, which to me is kind of annoying, like thematically, because, you know, you're exporting the revolution as the Commonwealth, so you're supposedly someone who is a little bit more progressive, right? So literally bringing the revolution on the point of bayonets perhaps is not, you know, the most progressive thing ever. You know, it would be good to have an option to help the proletariat of different countries do the revolution by themselves, or something like that. That would be the flavor slash lore explanation as to why. The gameplay explanation would be so that you have more choices, you know. That's pretty duh. And then if that fails, you get a war goal. A bit like how the Soviet focus tree works, you know? You get, like, you can export a revolution here, and you get coups, which can either be successful or fail, and if they fail, you can declare a war on them. You can just be like, screw it. And for the totalists, my explanation would be, you have created the bloody CIA, and you're a commie. So it would just be such poetic, you know, ha ha ha, compared to in real life, where you have the American CIA doing quote-unquote anti-communist coups in South and Central America. You're doing it from the reversal. So that would make people laugh, and it would be fun. I think that it just makes sense, you know? And also, you know, in real life, the Soviet Union did do quite a bit of internal subverting. So it's not like just because you're a totalist and you're bad and evil, you cannot do any of this, you know? Yeah, I don't know. That's just my opinion. But that's the end for the CSA. Pretty interesting. Definitely a lot better than before the 8.0 update. And yeah, I guess if you like this, leave a like or something, and stay tuned for the next one, which I'm not sure which one it is gonna be, if the AUS American sorry, not American, United States of America or Pacific States. Not sure which other guide I'll do first, but yeah, I'll do some of these, and then maybe I'll take a look at some Central American stuff too. So yeah, thank you all for joining, hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you soon.